nervous?
No.
Where's your answer?
Dennis Beckham, let the ball on! Dennis Beckham! Dennis Beckham! Dennis Beckham! Dennis Beckham! Oh!
Oh, no! Oh, yes! He missed it.
Welcome to the Suffering from Joy podcast. My name's Devin. The soccer gods smile upon us as Giassi Zardes bags a brace. Austin FC defeat NYCFC and their super evil petro oligarchy empire that just, loves human rights and definitely respects them for all people. Just as we all thought was going to happen. Joining me today to discuss is Charles Peacock of the False Nine, Texas. Charles, how you feeling?
I'm feeling good. The post-victory donuts just hit different.
Okay, yeah. Did you go to Round Rock Donuts like Josh says is his favorite?
No, because Round Rock Donuts are garbage. I went to the Donut Taco Palace too, around the corner from me.
Oh, excellent. That does sound way better.
It is. It's a million times better.
Okay, good. I'm glad you got the right donuts. I think we discussed this before. I eat donuts once a year because Riley makes super awesome apple cider donuts around like Thanksgiving every year, and that's the only time I eat donuts because they just don't compare.
I mean, that sounds worth it though. Like,
yeah,
the effort is worth it if you make the donuts.
Yeah, like I don't like avoid donuts. It's just sort of like, I could have breakfast taco. That sounds better for me most of the time. But also with us and hanging on is Seth, who knows everything. Seth, how you doing?
Doing well. I wasn't expecting to be able to join this podcast. I was supposed to be out on the road in South Dakota this weekend, but came down with COVID because that's still a thing in 2024. So it actually worked out okay. I have spent the last 4 days at home with copious amounts of Euros, Copa America, and MLS. Life could be worse.
Yeah. So I do have a follow-up question. You were halfway through last time we recorded your weekend in Kansas City.
Yeah.
And you were about to head out to the FCTO match in Lawrence, Kansas, which for those of you who don't know is the place where that song "We Found Love in a Hopeless Place" happens. So I want to ask you two questions. One, how did that adventure go? And two, what's the matter with Kansas?
So there's a few things here. So first of all, we went to the Royals game first and then drove from KC to Lawrence. Getting to Rock Chalk Park. So Rock Chalk Park is what the University of Kansas has built, but it's nowhere near the KU campus. It's probably like a 16-minute drive from the campus, which Lawrence, Kansas is not that big of a place. So the fact that it's a 16-minute drive from the campus says a lot right there. And because it's over the summer, they're doing a ton of construction on that front. So it's a bit of a mess. But it's kind of cool. They've got a setup there where it's a soccer stadium, tennis courts, there's a baseball stadium, the softball stadium. But we get there, they at least allow free parking and tailgating, but their security people were absolutely awful. It was two ladies, probably somewhere in their 50s or 60s, that prevented us from bringing in poles. They tried not to let us have the money gun in there, but we snuck that in anyways because we're clever like that. And we're just being very crotchety old ladies that were very un-college town-like. It was funny. When you get into the venue there, very good food, very good concessions. Like similar setup to the pitch, except the concessions were inside the venue. But there were probably only 150 people there, and there were 30 of us. So whenever we wanted to chant, we were by far the loudest people. And that was how it went. And it was an interesting match.
So I heard a rumor that it was your birthday last weekend. Did they let you bring your birthday balloon in?
They did not let me bring my birthday balloon in.
Okay, good. We saw that and we actually amplified it. And I don't know if you saw this, but the official MLS Next Pro account called out the Sporting KC2 people about it.
I did not see that. Now I'm going to have to go look for that.
Yeah, it's on the follow us on Twitter and Instagram at SufferingPod, and you can find it. It's on there. A lot of Euro shit talking in there too, especially if you like making fun of Cole Palmer. So I mean, we got that little bit done. Overall weekend, the U.S. lost. It wasn't a great sporting weekend after the KC Current thing for you, but overall would do again.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I would not do the Truly Trolley again for people who are on Slack and listening. you could go follow our horrendous story of taking a AO-sponsored trolley that was really just a shuttle bus without Trulies and people playing music at the top of their lungs. I never need to hear Lee Greenwood again, period, much less in a bus where no one was able to actually sit down or the driver know how to drive. It took us 2 hours to go something that should have taken 20 minutes. We had to walk the final 20 minutes into the stadium to barely make it for kickoff. I'm going to blame my COVID on the Truly trolley because that's the most logical explanation to me.
I mean, I would immediately make that association too. Charles, you want to weigh in? Truly trolley COVID?
Yeah, I was able to follow along with that absolutely horrendous journey. And it really made me glad that like every time I've gone to a road match, it's been so well organized and so easy to get to. And it's kind of just like a good reminder that like our away team, led by Seth, like actually knows what they're doing, unlike the people in charge of AO, and how like fortunate we are to have them. And how glad, and also like how glad I am that LV is not a like AO like sister organization like many of the Midwest teams are.
Yes, no, to all of that, we're very true. And that we've stopped organizing buses after Frisco 2021, and there's a reason why we don't organize buses anymore.
Is it the throw-ups?
That's only the beginning of it. That could be for the addition of the podcast and an off season of everything that could go wrong when you arrange a bus trip.
Okay, yeah, good. I know when I did the first hockey night out at Cedar Park, we were talking about doing a bus, and then I think Seth swiftly said, like, fuck this, don't ever do that. And I was like, okay, bye. Never mind. You guys want to talk about the game?
Yeah, sure. It's pleasant for once.
Yeah, I mean, well, I wanted to do kind of a longer intro and do it a little meta because the game was delayed. So I had this lovely thing. I live like 10 or 15 minutes from the stadium. So we like left and saw like all the rain and lightning and that the game was about to be delayed. And then like parked, looked at all the updates, turned around, went home, played with the dogs for an hour, and then came back. So I think we had a much easier experience getting in and out. Didn't have to walk through the rain at all than most people. But Charles, how was your general adventure?
I think adventure is the right word for it. So I'll say this: it wasn't nearly as bad as the rain for the LAFC match, even though that one wasn't delayed, as I recall. But there was a general sense, yeah, and so there also was just a general sense, like walking to the stadium, of like, oh, this is going to be bad, actually, at the end, because like I was walking up like Bright Verde Way, like on the sidewalk, and like it was already flooding on the sides, and the sidewalk was already flooding on the way to the match. And then you kind of get in there, and I'm down in the supporter section and I was close enough that I was still getting rained on because the rain was kind of falling straight down. But there just kind of was this like ominous feeling in the stands that, okay, this is going to get delayed. This is going to be one of those nights. And like, we've all been through those enough to like know kind of going in, like how draining they can be. Especially when it happens before like Lemurgy that's going, to where you don't have like the excitement and energy of just like, oh, you know what, fuck it, we're just going to sing and chant anyway because we're a bunch of idiots. And then just walking around the stadium like I usually do pre-match, just to like get a vibe of the fans. Like there definitely was that like foreboding sense the whole time of like, okay, how long are we going to be waiting for? That just kind of just immediately sets the night off into like a weird headspace.
Yeah, and I think they did a better job too this time, saying like, hey, we think it's going to start around like 8:55 or 9 instead of doing the Carol from 30 Rock trope played by Matt Damon of the it's going to be about a half an hour.
Yeah, I will say this, like something that bothered me was that the South End Jumbotron had check in with the Q2 on Twitter for blah, blah, blah. And like, they weren't actually posting updates for a long time. But
yeah,
the
like I'm
Apple
in the fucking
TV,
stadium, just announce it.
Yeah, right? Like you have an announcer and you have like, and obviously like you have an ability to let us know. But the Apple, like the MLS app actually had, like once a kickoff time was determined, they actually had that on the app like an hour in advance of like when they were going to start it. And so I thought that was helpful for those of us who like had reception in the stadium to at least have an idea of like, oh, we're actually starting in 30 minutes. And why like that wasn't a like, I don't remember getting an announcement in Q2 about it. There might have been. I might have just not heard it, which is its own problem. I thought that was just helpful, like communication wise.
Is it possible that you just didn't hear it over the roaring nature of Old Trafford Falls West?
Yeah, I mean, I was gonna save that. But
Okay.
yeah, like, yeah, that was also an interesting experience of walking around the stadium before the match.
Okay. But I mean, generally not like super bad. Like you got an expectation, you stayed as dry as you could, and then you got to enjoy the game. And yeah, I mean, any kind of lineup thoughts or anything like that?
Um, so the sneaky thing that Austin did that I think Austin is not necessarily cynical as they should be when it comes to yellow card stuff, because they've done this in the past where like Danny had a yellow card issue, but then like couldn't travel to Canada. And it's like, well, you should have gotten a yellow card in the game before and served your suspension in Canada when you weren't able to travel there.
Yep.
And just to like burn and get out of the way. So I appreciated that Danny was able to serve his suspension last night in a game that he was never going to actually play in. And that was kind of like a good way of like getting through it. I think this lineup's kind of just like what the lineup is at this point. I mean, everybody kind of expected Zardes to start with Rubio out. Rubio's out, and he had an amazing game, not even just like the goal scored, but at one point they showed a graphic of Miles' run during the game, and he was leading everybody on the field.
I mean, that was real. Like, I've never seen, like, if you'd given me 1,000 to 1 odds on that happening in a match this year, I would have been like, oh yeah, I wouldn't even bet on that. Why would I do that? I was floored. I mean, multiple people, including myself, took pictures of my television and was stunned by what I was seeing.
I mean, it's also that like typically like strikers aren't the people who win that. It's always like a midfielder or like a winger. So I thought that, and so I was just kind of nice to see like that level of performance and commitment from him, and especially considering that we've seen so much of the team that like doesn't seem as committed as we want them to be. But yeah, like I thought the lineup, like it's kind of what we expected. It's kind of what the options are until the 18th. And it just, to me, Austin is less about picking the lineups and the tactics, which we always know what they're going to be, and more just kind of like their own effort and like sharpness.
Yeah, I mean, we did have the one little problem we did have Valencia back, but Danny's out. You know, he would have been out either way, where we basically played everybody who can play central midfield from the go. Alonso Ramirez was back down on FCito. And I did like the Danny suspension thing. I went to FCito on Friday. And so when I walked out of that game, which, FCito, big win, CJ played a half and scored a penalty. Alonso Ramirez with a great free kick that I think we tweeted out, which once again at Suffering Pod on Twitter and Instagram. I'm going to get all of the times I didn't say that in previous episodes in on this one. And great free kick. So won the game. I walked out and there's like this giant contingent of people watching on the big screen at the pitch, all in Venezuela jerseys. And I'm sitting there kind of like, well, Venezuela didn't play Danny when they easily could have, up 2-0 at Q2 with literally nothing writing on it. Could have thrown him in for 10 minutes. And it's really helpful if Danny is back sooner. And I don't know if I really care if Canada wins. So I was trying not to root for Canada, but in the back of my mind, I was like, it might be good if Danny loses in this game. But yeah, I mean, like you said, it is what it is. And, I thought Owen played pretty well in the wing. So I thought so.
I thought so too. I think he generally tends to play better when he has more people to play off of. And just kind of like in those spaces, like we actually looked like a competent soccer team, like passing around and moving a couple times last night, which we're not used to. I will say this: I've started rooting for Canada because I love the Jesse Marsch revenge against the U.S. men's national team tour. Because you can tell that like every win is just him, just like giving a middle finger to like the decision makers who didn't hire him.
And it's also, I mean, tactics aside, and I'm not always a huge fan of Jesse Marsch chaos ball because that's really what it is. But after seeing the Greg Berhalter, Josh Wolf level of emotions, which, I mean, there are some occasionally, seeing Jesse Marsch being literally looking like that when he worked for Red Bull throughout his 3 jobs before going to Leeds, that they had injected a permanent IV of Red Bull into his system that is still going through his system now as Canada coach, that it's just wow, coaches have emotions and energy and are willing to show that at all times. So this makes him feel human in a way that we don't get from the Greg Joshes of the world.
Yeah. And I mean, this is sort of my version of, we talked about it a lot on the podcast last week about like when, if ever, is it okay for you to root against your team for the long-term, quote unquote, greater good, TM, whatever you want to call it. And I think my version of that is rooting for Jesse Marsh in Canada. But we'll cover a little bit.
And if they beat Argentina, that's going to be the most hilarious result in soccer this summer by a good margin.
So I almost predicted that Canada would get a result in the opening game, and it would be way funnier if it happens now.
Yes.
And as you guys know, the guiding light in this podcast is the funniest answer is usually, if not always, the best.
Yes.
Okay, well, we do have to talk about the start of the game where we probably should have been down like 3 goals in 15 minutes.
Yeah. I mean, coming into this match, it looked like, oh gosh, this is Austin FC after a rain delay, not a heat delay, which admittedly we've had a heat delay before and we're fine with a heat delay. But for a rain delay, that it was like, oh gosh, these guys are still asleep. Like, I don't know, I wonder what the team does. Maybe we'll see this. I mean, our video team this year hasn't been as good, so maybe we'll get a good video midweek of this match. But like, I want to know, like, what does the team do at this point? Do they just like chill around the locker room? Like, who's the team DJ? Like, I almost felt like they came into that game still in a meditative trance. Maybe that someone was leading meditations or something else through there because they didn't look like they were ready to play, I don't know, an actual MLS match for the first, 15, 20 minutes.
Yeah, I mean, we don't have a great history with delays, so maybe we need to do like Red Bull injections or something. Who knows?
Yeah, whatever. But at least that like NYCFC did. I mean, they were short a number of guys last night as well, but they did look tired and exhausted and looked like the team that was playing a 10 p.m. match on the road after they had played a match 3 days ago. And thankfully, we were somehow not necessarily in better shape because we'll talk about it later. We did have 3 guys go down for injuries last night, but it was that we at least were able to, our tortoise-like approach seemed to keep us in enough shape to get the win.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think there's any question NYCFC, even down players, were clearly the better team on the night, but they angered the soccer gods, and this is what fucking happens to you when you do that sort of bullshit. I guess let's talk about the goal. Like, they're basically carved us open the entire first 15 minutes and then slapped across the box. Easy tap in. Nobody's playing D, backside, center backs, anybody closing down across, anything. It sort of looked like all of you stand there and be training cones. Charles, any other thoughts, or did I pretty much nail it?
You nailed it. The lack of pressure on the cross is really just like something that bothers me every time I watch Austin, of just like the fullbacks just don't get out and the wingers just don't get out there. And like, you can't just let, I mean, I know it's MLS and it's not like a top tier league, but like, you still can't let professional soccer players just whip in crosses, as is evidenced by the first Austin goal. Like, you just can't let them do that because they'll find openings. And it makes it so much tougher on your defense when the cross is just exactly where it needs to be.
Yeah, and I mean, like, I go in on, I'm assuming this is a coaching thing. I go in on a Wolf about this all the time, so I'm not going to do it again. But yeah, like you said, like, if the ball comes in free, and I mean, this isn't even like a soccer principle. This is like a, every sport in existence, like basketball, you don't have to swat it into the third row. Just make the guy alter his shot and he'll miss. Sort of principle.
Yeah, like, that's part of, I mean, that's something that we see a lot, is that like there's no pressure on the crosser and there's nobody guarding the person on the back post. And you always just kind of wonder, like, what are the fullbacks and the wingers taught to do?
Yeah, I thought this one was a little worse because usually that like backside guy is the fullback either sinking in too much or kind of falling asleep. Like this one, both center backs had a whack at it and didn't do anything. And fullback like totally just went to sleep, which we've seen before. But yeah, I mean, they had 3 or 4 other ones where it was nobody on the back post and we got lucky that they missed. But yeah, Seth, any thoughts on the goal?
It was as expected as a goal against Austin FC could be.
I think that's a good description. If you were to draw up a goal scored against Austin FC, this is it.
Yeah, okay. A winger missed the ball. It should never have been there. Wingbacks aren't doing their things in positioning. Center backs are trying to, but there's only 2 center backs, so there's 4 guys from the other team in the box. Voila, Stuver tries but can't do anything because you would need 2 goalies, and even then that might not be enough.
Yeah. Well, then like some weird stuff happens. NYCFC had a guy get hurt, subbed him off. And then they started doing this like weird shithousing, like extreme, like just going down and holding everything. And like I was sitting up there in the stands, and we had a lot of kind of people who it seemed like it was their first game, and they're kind of like, well, what's going on? And it's like, well, I don't know. Like they do know they're playing Austin FC. Like for most teams, this is a like goal differential padding game. At least if you're in the upper tier of the league. Which, by the way, congratulations, Seth, on FCC getting a big goal padding game against Inter Miami yesterday.
That was fantastic to watch. And it actually worked out really well because of the rain delay, that I was able to do the tool screens on having the KC Current Orlando Pride game, which was spectacular soccer. KC lost their first game. Both teams were undefeated going into that game. And if you haven't watched Orlando or KC at NWSL this year, treat yourself to a game once they get back from the Olympics, because these 2 teams are playing some of the best women's club soccer in the world. I would love to see them go up against Arsenal, City, Chelsea, Barcelona, because like they are just an absolute treat to watch. You had, I think, 9 Olympians on the field last night, and there's only 12 teams in the Olympics with 18 women rosters. Like, it was outstanding. And then watching Cincinnati, Miami as well, where, yes, Miami did not have Messi, Suarez, and Alba, but like, and Busquets got a red card because he got a yellow, and then he told the ref to F off and got a second yellow within 10 seconds, which is always one of my favorite types of a red card.
Yeah, it wasn't quite the Serginho Dest outburst, but it was very clearly, I would like to go home.
Yes, it's just like, I am done with this. And like, FC Cincinnati doesn't have a striker right now. They only have effectively 1 center back. And I mean, I assume that they're going to trade for Matt Hedges or maybe Leo or Julio. We'll see. But I expect that one of our 5 center backs will be going to FC Cincinnati in the next 2 weeks. But we'll see how that all plays out.
Yeah, I mean, we'll have a little bit of a trade deadline type of a carousel here, and it'll be good fun. I did notice too, like, even kind of in between the shithousing they were doing, like basically anytime they touched the ball in the break, we were completely torched. Like, I know people are going to be like, oh, well, it's just Austin FC playing defense. And like, our transition defense for a lot of this year has been halfway decent. At least the center backs, and like everybody looked like they had no idea what the fuck was going on. Charles, is that how you saw it?
Yeah, especially because like in those transition moments, like Austin does such a, how can I put this, determined effort to spread the field when they have the ball, that it makes it inherently difficult for them to transition effectively unless you have like Valencia there to just counterattack or to counter it, which is why he gets so many yellow cards, is because he gets put in bad positions that way. And so that at some point is just a like tactical decision of like putting the balance into like, I value the space and attack more than being able to defend.
And this is a match that we would have loved to have had Danny for, because I feel like Danny is someone who, if he's playing even at the 8, but really playing at the 6 there, could really organize the defense in a way that Valencia couldn't last night.
Yeah, also because like something to think about is that like New York is a really good transition team because they play on the smallest field in the league. It's actually the smallest field that FIFA allows. And so for them, like being in transition and pressuring makes sense because you're never that far away from the goal. And so that's just kind of like the nature of how they play. And so they inherently are just pretty good at it.
Yeah, and I mean, to both your points too, like when Valencia went off, you could see the hole in midfield got even bigger. Especially towards the end of the game, like they were just walking it straight through the middle of the park. But we didn't end up paying for it. I didn't know a whole lot about NYCFC before this game, other than they were like pretty good. And I was pretty impressed. Like, obviously they didn't put the ball in the net, but I could easily see how they're kind of would give some teams some trouble in the playoffs.
And remember, this is an NYCFC team that was missing over almost half their starting lineup. on 2 days rest on traveling halfway across the country. Like we didn't see a good Austin team last night either, but like we did not see a finished NYCFC product. But the problem for NYCFC is that they're in the East and you have 3 elite teams in the East and they're in that tier that in my mind is just sub-elite. So like if they're going to want to make waves in the East, they got to be better than Cincy, Columbus, and Miami, and that's going to be hard.
Yeah. I'm not going to feel bad for them, though.
I mean,
they did have.
I will say, well, actually, no, I'm going to save that for Stock Rising later. But there are some really good things about NYCFC, and I will, because I'm not going to put this in Stock Rising, is that their fans, even though they didn't make very much noise from what I heard last night, but like they brought 200 fans down to Austin in July. Like, props to them. Like, that's good. That's good for the league.
Yeah, I mean, they were loud in the beginning, and after the goal, but then like, their players started going down and like, I know the one guy was really injured and one of their other players who spent the rest of the game basically dressed as a, Crimean war veteran, probably should have gone off with concussion protocol. It sounds like from people who had better views than me, but there were multiple like long fake injuries. And I don't understand why you would do that in a game you're already dominating against Austin FC. And I think it kind of like drained the energy from the fans as much as the rest of us. Like, what the fuck are you guys doing?
Do you know who you're playing here? Like, yeah, we're one step above San Jose. Like,
yeah, and like, I did enjoy that. I guess because they were shorthanded, they had Sneakers O'Toole at left back, but because I got to watch him bomb up and down the field for the first 20 minutes before everything got, stodgy and terrible, and it was nothing but NYCFC countering on us. But I did think we played better in the first half after we got through that kind of first 15-minute wave of holy shit, we're only down a goal.
Yeah, no, like if you look at it, like, I mean, the first 15 minutes of the match reminded me of the opener of the season against Minnesota, where it was 90 minutes of that. I was like, oh God, we're back here. And then it's like, no, we actually regained our footing. And I mean, getting that equalizer right before the half was huge because I feel like if you go down 1-0 into the half there, you start to spiral to be like, well, we played better, but like, it didn't make a difference. But to quote Josh Wolf, goals change games.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, we had 6 shots in the first half, which is like our entire fucking total on the road all year. But we were growing more and more into the game, and they kept kind of like faking injuries and taking themselves out of it and not capitalizing on, the moments they had in transition. And they had plenty of good chances. They had 3 or 4 that I would consider, you should score that at least half the time. But I didn't feel a goal coming. Charles, how about you?
I kind of have to disagree. Like, just looking at the, like, I'm just looking at, like, the XG totals on Footbomb right now. And, like, Austin did have, like, some good chances, and there was more shooting than, like, we expect. It just, we've talked about this for the last couple of weeks about, like, you have to put pressure on defenses and the keeper and just put shots on goal. And it's great that they listened to that, but, like, they did it against Matt Freese, who's one of the best keepers in the league, and they didn't do it against Zach Steffen and the Minnesota keeper, whose name escapes me because he doesn't deserve to be remembered. So
his name is Clint Irwin, sir.
Thank you.
And I went to college with him.
And so that's his true claim to fame, to be honest. And so like it was nice to see that like they were actually like Driussi hit like a shot outside of the box that like at least like forced a decent save. And so I thought that like there was just generally more attacking than normal. And so I thought like I didn't have that hopeless feeling that we have so many times when Austin plays of like we're never scoring.
Yeah, I mean, I was trying to say like NYCFC had a bunch of chances they should have scored.
I mean, they did, but at the same time, like, there's a weird thing that like at the end of the broadcast, Apple had their XG at like 2.7, and I remember looking at that and being like, how the fuck is that 2.7? And I'm looking through like other sites today, and I don't see anything above like 1.6 or 1.7. And so I don't know what was going on there. I just kind of thought that like they had a lot of like good possession or good like things happening, but they never really resulted into like a really great chance.
Yeah. I mean, they had a couple where guy was running in the box, and there was one right after the goal where the guy shot it just wide, and that would have effectively ended the game at 2-0.
Yeah, there was. I mean, if I watched the highlights this morning, And what was really striking was how often, what was his name? Elenic, I think it was, who like kept hitting crosses that weren't crosses.
Yes.
In a way that like like he set up to go for a cross, but tried to like hit it into like the back post upper 90. Because he did that twice, and I think he hit the crossbar once, and he was just over the other time. And you just kind of have to wonder like how much better off he would have been not trying to do that.
Yeah, I couldn't tell, especially on the first one, if that was like a mishit cross or he was trying to chip Stuver or what was going on with that.
I think the second one made me think it was intentional.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Yeah, but I mean, like, you know, we had some chances. We had a good one with O'Brien that got blocked at the near post, and you know, it felt like we were kind of moving around, but seemed a little hopeless. That was a really good save by Freese. Yeah, it was. You know, it felt like we were doing that Austin thing where we're never going to break the deadlock until we did. But I mean, do you guys think we were going to score?
I mean, I thought we were going to get an equalizer at a point eventually, but I did not expect that we would get a second goal out of this match. Like that's what legitimately surprised me. Yeah.
All right, I guess let's get into the fun stuff. Charles, you want to paint us a word picture about the Gyasi Zardes goal, which was not a full year after his last goal, but, you know, 11 months and change.
You know, July's his month. That's really what you need to know.
It is. Yep. Which is good because we need somebody to score some fucking goals this month.
Yeah. No, what I really like about this goal is that, like, that it really starts with, like, what we talk about with putting pressure on passers. Is that Ring gets the ball, like, in the attacking half, but kind of close to the half line. Nobody really covers him. And he gets a chance to pick his head up, and he just picks out this great ball to O'Brien, where the announcer literally says, the color guy, literally goes, "Great ball," and just says it, and there's like silence on either side of it. And then O'Brien doesn't get pressured enough, is able to pick his head up and pass the ball in and hit it back post to Zardes, who does a really good job on the header because he really gets a chance to like see it and set up to put it across the goal against Freese, and Freese just doesn't have a chance there. Like that's a perfect chance into the box where it's close enough and the striker was able to see it well enough that like you should finish that 100% of the time.
Yeah, and I mean, people who don't watch a ton of soccer probably don't realize how excellent of a header this is because Zardes like body positions himself totally perfectly. Defender loses him, and he's, you know, essentially moving backwards, and he uses that momentum to cushion the ball off his head. Two things you want here: back across goal, so the keeper's moving the other way, and down onto the line, so he has to get all the way down to save it. And you can, I mean, Freese is pretty close to it, but I'm with you. There's no way he was saving it because he put it in those two things: back across goal and down onto the line. And then the place just fucking explodes. And I don't know how many people realized that was Zardes at the moment because they were like, it was right before halftime, and a bunch of people had kind of like left their seats to go do halftime stuff, but they realized there was a goal. And I don't know, how did it look on TV, Seth?
It looked like, I mean, also like the crowd vibes were very weird on TV because I'd say, I mean, Devin, you were the only one of the three of us who was there last night. So getting to that point, I mean, it looked like it was maybe 70% full based on the TV shots.
Yeah, 70, 80. It's kind of hard to tell. My side, I'm on the east side, was pretty full. Supporter section was pretty full, but the expensive seats were not as full.
Yeah, and the north end, especially the second half, had a lot of empty space in it. And the corners of the supporter section were open, which is usually a tell sign around other things. But it felt like, we had +7 in both halves of this match. And you get to a point there where it was like, okay, like it's Austin FC. We've seen enough. Let me go get my 1849 jellyfish or whatever to get me through the second half of this. But it was like, we got it. We there was like one of those like you had to do like a triple take of like, wait a minute, that ball went to Gyasi. Gyasi finished that. Oh, okay. But that was more placement. Where if we look more at the second goal, it's like, oh shit, he made a real run to get to that. And it's just seeing him build this momentum, build this confidence is something that is hopefully a really good sign for the remaining matches of this season.
Yeah, and I think a lot of us, I'm definitely in this camp, have got so down on him last year, and I mean even this year with how much money he's making, that like any little bit he does, we're like, oh shit, that's amazing. Like kind of almost similar to like when you see a player come up from the youth ranks and you're like, oh, you did like this small thing great. Like I'm so proud of you. And I mean, it's patronizing as fuck. I don't mean to be that way, but
Yeah.
I've kind of gotten to that point. I saw a few, comments and tweets about, that's only $500,000 a goal now. Like, let's keep getting that number down, which, fair enough. It's funny, but I mean, if he has a hot June or a hot July, that gets us into the reinforcements coming in. That might be handy in getting us into a playoff spot.
Yeah. Every point matters. Every goal matters. Right now, we are in 9th place. We are 1 point behind 6th place, but we are tied with 2 other teams that have the same number of wins, because MLS does wins before goal differential. But goal differential is the difference between us missing the play-in game and going directly into the playoffs rather than having to go to the play-in game right now. Every goal matters.
Yeah, and I mean, Minnesota's a point behind us. They have a game in hand, but behind them, 6-point drop to Frisco. Like it's, we could easily see this month that pack kind of separate out where it's, there's 10 teams going for 9 playoff spots, quote unquote.
Yeah, I mean, there is some separation. Obviously, there's still time for the other teams to close the gap. Minnesota's match in hand is tonight in Carson against the Galaxy. And I think if you're an Austin FC fan at this point, you look at the Western Conference table, and you have 3 teams that have sort of separated themselves from the rest of the West in LAFC, RSL, and the Galaxy. They are at 43, 43, and 40 points, and I believe all 3 of them RSL played last night and beat they beat Atlanta United 5-2, with Diego Luna having an amazing game, and somehow Diego Luna wasn't called up to the U.S. Olympic team, and screw U.S. soccer. But to come back to that later. But at this point, if you're Austin FC, our goal has to be to somehow finish 4th in the West. Is the reach goal. And like Colorado's played the same number of matches as us, and is only 4 points ahead of us. Is that an ambitious goal? Absolutely. But if you think that we're having 3 really strong players coming in, my hunch is we're going to get a 4th really strong player coming in as well too. Like this team, if you're going to set ambitious goals, the ambitious goal is to push for a top 4 spot in the West.
Yeah, and I mean, we all would have been happy at the beginning of the year with us just making a play-in game or making the playoffs, especially after that Minnesota United opener.
Oh yeah.
But if you want to be optimistic and really, like you said, set high-end goals, finish 4th, go into the playoffs, kicking the door down, weirder shit's happened.
This is MLS. Crazy shit will happen. I mean, I think right now the reach goal is finish 4th. The realistic goal is finish 7th. Okay, we did it, is make the play-in game and burn it all down if we finish 10th or worse.
Yeah, and I mean, we'll have to fix a way for him at some point in here. But Charles, are you feeling optimistic or like, wow, that was a cool one-off game?
So I'm feeling a little optimistic because I think that part of it is also Austin's kind of hitting a lot of teams at a good point. Like you mentioned before, like New York City played on Wednesday and they had to travel here and play a late game. We play Seattle next week. Seattle has to play a Open Cup match on the 9th. At Sacramento.
And it's gonna be hot there.
Yeah. And then you look at the next match, which is a very important match in playing Dallas on the 17th, which is a match that 1, Austin can clinch Copa Tejas, and 2, can really add to that separation between Austin and the first team that's really kind of like out of the playoffs. Dallas played July 4th. They play today. They play the 10th and the 13th and the 17th, and including playing Sporting KC twice. And yes. So like they are just going to be like, that is a gauntlet to run through, and to think that they're going to be like energetic enough for that match, I just don't know that's going to be the case. So if those are the 2 remaining matches before the 20th, which is when in theory all of the new guys can start playing, like we might be able to like enter that period on a high.
So I mean, let's game theory this real quick and we'll get back to the second half of the game. But so we have Saturday, Seattle, Wednesday at Frisco, Saturday, home to Charlotte. Is there any way you stack players where you're kind of pushing your current starters, or do you maybe like roll out Nathan Finley as kind of like a legs guy on Saturday just to maybe save a little extra for Frisco, and then, hey, you got some legs and you can throw the new guys in against Charlotte? Or how do you do your lineup?
I mean, the Seattle match is a really important match. They're only a point ahead of us in the table right now. Like, it's cliche to say every match is an important match, but
goals change games, Seth.
Yeah, but even beyond that, it is if we're looking at it, Frisco is the only team that we play in the remaining part of the season that is not in the playoffs currently. Like every match is a 6-pointer from here on out. So I don't know if maybe you start like an Ethan. I mean, I have to imagine Diego. I mean, the funny thing is, do you save now after Zardes gets a praise? Do we save Zardes to go 90 in Frisco because that he will have Rubio for this match? We'll also have Danny for this match. Like, well, I assume Julio will be back to starting, but maybe not. But like we'll be able to have more depth for these matches unless we do something stupid. No one else got suspended last night, and hopefully no one else will get suspended before the Frisco match. Obviously, the big concern that we haven't really talked about is that we had 3 players go off with knocks last night, and we have no idea how bad any of them are. I mean, Alex Ring did not look good at the end of last night, so who knows if Alex Ring's going to be able to play. Valencia seemed a little bit more just exhausted, and he's the most easily replaceable with Danny coming back in there. But I really hope Biru isn't out for a long time, but I think that might have just been more just in his head than anything else.
Yeah, I mean, we'll wait and see. And it kind of feels like one of those, you had 2 central midfielders go down. I mean, maybe they're long-term, maybe it was just exhaustion or, some weird stuff from the delay or something. But, we talked about it. Owen had a really good game on the wing, and, now we may have to like chuck it back in central midfield just out of desperation. So life's not always fair. Charles, you want to tell us about the second half?
Yeah, I thought the second half, like Austin generally played better in the sense, and partially because like I think Austin has this bad habit of scoring and then laying back, which is also something that like is just part of having a Berhalter assistant coaching. And I was happy to see that they kind of didn't just like rest and accept the attack as much as we've seen them do too much of just kind of like preserving the draw. We talked about Owen kind of like going back central. I thought Owen got more into central positions, especially for where he was on the Zardes goal, which was a really great individual effort on his part that I think kind of got overlooked. And just the like, oh my God, Zardes scored. But like, if you watch like the lead up to that play, like that's all Owen creating something out of nothing.
Yeah, and a great pass too. Yeah,
like he gets by a defender, gets going, sees the pass early instead of just like dribbling it through or like passing back or something like that, in a way that like we don't always see Austin players do. And that's really where you see like the potential of him is because like when he has a chance to play off of things and has people running, like he really can just like he has that passing vision ability to do that. We just don't get to see that much because Austin doesn't make those runs.
Yeah, and I mean he's also dribbling with his head up, which isn't exactly an Austin FC staple, but hey, I mean, you took us halfway there. You want to tell us a little bit more about the goal?
It's first of all something we're not used to seeing, which is Zardes running behind the defense, outpacing someone to get the ball, and then also just like an absolutely perfect finish. That he really set up, like, you talked about the body position on the header, but like his body position on this was good too, in the sense that like he was, because so many strikers will just like pull that wide or end up like smashing it at the keeper weakly. And so like his finish actually was just one of those like, oh my God, he really scored that. Like in the same way that like the Rigoni goal against Houston, you're like, oh shit, he's actually going to score.
Yeah. I mean, you mentioned like he beats the trap and essentially beats the trap. And the guy next to me was just totally convinced he was offside because he can't outrun anybody. And I was just like, no, I'm pretty sure he's on, dude. Yeah. But like you said, he takes that first touch and shapes both himself and the keeper where he wants them to be, which means when that ball comes in from Owen, he knows what he wants to do with it. And especially like we kind of talked about our disorganized shooting and stuff like that. I don't think we have enough of that. But he takes that touch, draws the keeper over closer to him. So, because obviously if the keeper doesn't come, he's just going to smack it straight into the goal, and sets the keeper up for where he wants to put this. Now, like, I'm going to guess Gyasi doesn't ping this in off the post perfectly like that 10 out of 10 times, but actually setting things up to be how you want them to be is a good way to get goals. And he hits it. It is bending away from the keeper, pings in off the post, goal, 2-1 Austin. And then, whoever was still there was going incredibly crazy, and we're all thinking what we're not saying, but like, could we possibly get a Gyasi hat trick?
Yes. Yeah, well, way too many people were saying that last night. And it's like, are we going to jinx this? Like, no, first of all. But like, I also get to the point of like, okay, is this even jinxing at a point? Because it is so improbable that we're just all laughing at this. Like, we never thought we would get to this point. So like, heck, why not? Obviously, he didn't get the hat trick, but you know what? We got the 3 points, and that's the 3 that I really care about.
Yeah, I mean, I'm superstitious, but at some point that just goes out the window.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, 3 points. We did, I wanted to note too, like we did eventually go into kind of like our shell and start defending more, but like we tried to play out for a lot longer than we have been. Like we've been going shell like 50, 55, 60th minute. We really didn't do it till closer to late 70s, 80th minute. And, NYCFC still had some good chances come out of that. There was one where a guy basically hit it fat off his foot. Otherwise, it's a tap in into the net. I would have kind of rolled the Stuber. And I think maybe pushing them out a little bit more helped us kind of keep up our energy levels. But Charles, any thoughts on this? Because I know this is a hobby horse of yours.
Yeah, like I thought it wasn't nearly as bad as it normally is. And I think some of it was kind of a function of just like when you're down, because Valencia had to come out and, you put Ring back there. And as much as Ring has been a defensive midfielder in his career, like he kind of just can't cover that ground anymore. And so I thought going to more of a defensive shell made sense, especially bringing on fresh legs for it. Because there was just a sense of like the guys were tired. So I thought it worked better in that sense. While also having like a little bit more counterattacking with CJ and Zardes up top, especially at the end, they kind of almost went to like more of a 4-4-2 setup. And CJ did a good job of applying pressure during the build-up in a way that Austin doesn't normally, because they usually bring their line of contention all the way back into their own half. Mm-hmm. And I always think that's kind of like the big mistake of the accepting pressure it's not bringing Hedges on as another center back. It's that we don't contest them until they're within like 30 yards of our goal. And then like, you're just compact so much that you're just inviting cross after cross after cross.
Yeah. And I don't know if you guys could see this on TV, but we actually changed the way we press too, where we're not doing that spearhead thing. It was a flat 4-2-4. Yeah. We're playing a flat kind of like, I would call it basically a mid-block 4-2-4. And we would, camp a line of 4 guys like just inside their half and then make them play it around a little bit. Like I said, this isn't, like defensive stalwart tactics or anything, but it makes them think about it. They can't just burn us on the counter. They did a couple times, but it was much more infrequent than if we go into our shell and we just let them, like Charles said, like ping cross after cross after cross and wait for bad things to happen. But, they have to possess the ball for 2 minutes before they can generate a chance. And, we're not running our asses off and burning ourselves out. So I thought it was good. We're all still wolf out here, but it was good tactical adjustment by Josh. So we got to give him credit when he does something right.
And admittedly, we didn't go to a back 5 until the 89th minute. And I don't think
and I'm fine with that.
Until unless Ring had gotten hurt. And like when he did that, that was the right decision.
Yeah. And I mean, once you hit the 90th minute, you're almost not even playing a shape anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah. The other good part you were talking about pushing up is that like Fodry had a couple of like bad defensive switches with, I think it was Gallagher was on the left at the time.
Yep.
And so getting him kind of like up and away from like the real like defensive work and like inner working was a good plan, because that just didn't look very good and looked like he was kind of lost.
Yeah, even after scoring a nice confidence-boosting penalty on Friday, he still didn't look super confident, but I think he looked better than he has. So, I mean, we're making progress a little bit by little bit, I guess.
Yeah, agreed. It just, it's one of those things of like him not playing as much and him not like working with the team, like on the field. But it still was one of those things of like, okay, this gives me concern.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Especially on a 1-goal lead. And everybody in the stadium is anxious.
Yes.
Yeah. But no, I mean, he did like kind of run some guys down. And like you said, defense switch wise, that's communication. Hopefully you would think they would sort that out. We'll see. But I would say an improved performance, if not great.
Yep. I think that's a fair assessment.
Yeah. And I mean, there were a couple chances, but it wasn't like biting your fingernails off towards the end. Like the LAFC game was like, holy shit, they're going to fucking score for 45 minutes.
Yeah, NYCFC at the moment. I mean, I was a little surprised they didn't bring Thomas Magno in at the end because he's getting back into form and he was on the bench last night. Like if they had brought someone like him in there, you'd be like, oh gosh, he's a goal scorer. He could get this done. But there was no one on that NYCFC roster to be like, oh gosh, this is they didn't have a Denny Bouanga type out there. There was no one there that was like, oh my gosh, you get them into a late minute situation and they're going to score, which that helped us last night.
Yeah, I mean, their number 10 was pretty lively, but he kept like dribbling the ball out of play, which is pretty helpful for us.
Yeah, I was about to say, he didn't get the call up to the Costa Rican national team, and they could have used someone better at the 10 than they had in this past tournament. So that says a lot right there.
Yeah. No, but I mean, I think it fit several themes, namely that when Josh does the things we bitch about and ask him to do, we play better. Charles, any thoughts on that?
I mean, it's obvious that we're correct and that Wolf needs to listen. And if he's not required to listen, then Burrell should just like blare it during practice to make sure that everybody hears what we say.
Yeah. If that happens, I'll make sure to include more side pieces and meandering stories. So they definitely don't get too engaged. They know they have to listen to every word because the instructions are going to be completely haphazard and scattered, and they won't know when they're coming. All right, you guys want to do some format stuff?
Yep.
All right. Seth, you are ill, so I will let you go first on stock rising.
So I'm going to go with two non-game factors for stock rising and stock falling today. So one of the things that I'm going to give a stock rising to the NYCFC media team, which is a very weird thing to give a stock rising to, especially like me praising City Sports Group is not something that happens very often. But they did an awesome pre-match show last night that went on for over 2 hours because of the rain delay. They actually had their radio team travel to Austin. Before the match, they interviewed We Are Austin TV to get authentic fan reactions about what to expect in Austin. They did a pre-match show at Anton's where they were talking about Austin culture and other things like that. They were going through details and stuff on our roster, how their roster would match up, and it shows you a level of media coverage that you would expect from the main team in the largest city in the country. And honestly, that should set the bar for what Austin should do. And Austin was initially investing in that, but with Apple has really cut back their investment in that. And I like Lincoln Rose, but like Lincoln is one guy who doesn't know that much about all of this stuff. He's learning and he's a good person. But you get to there where you have Glenn Crooks and the British guy they had with him who was a center back from Millwall for years. And it was just like, wow, this is what a top tier professional media system to support a team infrastructure looks like. And that's really impressive. And I think it's going to serve them really well once they move into a real stadium where they're not playing in 2 baseball stadiums.
I'm going to have to back up there for a second. So the team whose supporters group is like Proud Boys FC has a radio announcer who is a center back at Millwall.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah,
making sure I heard that right.
Yeah. And he played at Palace and a few other places, but yes, he was at Millwall for 6 seasons.
Okay. No, that fits.
But like, it's interesting. So like, I also think that the NYCFC fans get unfairly maligned because that they do have, yes, there's definitely like 5% of their fan base that is very much in that direction. But most of the fans who travel, most of the other people there are not like those people. And just like, I don't know, there are some odd people in the Austin FC fan base as well that we don't want to associate with. I do feel like that does not represent the vast majority of NYCFC fans, and I will give them a slight pass for that because everyone will acknowledge the trolls among them.
Well, I mean, they willingly associated with City Football Group, so that's on them.
But like your choices in New York are pretty awful. I was actually talking with this with one of my good college friends yesterday, who is from the Boston area, but he's like, I can't support the New England Revolution because Bob Kraft still owns them and isn't willing to put them in Boston. He lives in Brooklyn. He's like, oh, so should I go support the City football group or the Red Bull team? Yeah, those options suck.
Yeah, well, by the way, one of the fun things about being in the stadium is a bunch of random people just kept turning around and looking up at the away supporters and just yelling like, fuck you, go back to Brooklyn and shit like that, which does not normally happen around me. So it's just like, wow, all these random people really fucking hate New Yorkers. Like, I
mean, more than LA folks?
Yeah.
I mean,
I thought it was weird.
That defies Austin stereotypes, because I thought like we should hate Californians more than New Yorkers.
Well, like you said, it was kind of a weird dynamic and like fan setup, and there was the delay, so I assume there were more beers, and we were actually winning, so maybe there was more like willingness to go at the other team or something. But I don't know. I was just like, oh, well, you know, I have my opinions on fucking Yankees, but like this is delightful to just hear other random people yelling this stuff.
So unfortunately, so to give you some insight, the reason why so many Texans hate New Yorkers is from the old salsa battles of the early 1990s.
I am familiar with this, but this is not.
I am not. So please tell me. I wish I had a beer for this, actually.
Okay. Well, first of all, it's not that serious. I thought everybody would get this reference. So Old El Paso used to have commercials about their salsa, about how it was authentically made and blah blah blah. And the premise of the ad was these cowboys, like all those cowboys eating salsa out of a bottle, which doesn't make any sense anyway. But they realized that the salsa was made in New York City, and they go, New York City, like that, as a like, and then the cowboy gets like strung up or left or something. But yeah, I'm sure everybody else, I'm sure like 90% of our audience will get that reference.
Okay, yeah. I mean,
and if not, you should post the video on the Twitter account and the Instagram.
The video
if you're not following, please follow.
Okay, yeah. We'll do another plug for it. Follow us at Suffering Pod on Twitter and Instagram, and we'll post it on Twitter. Yeah, the other thing I could think of was that like the New York Times and a few other like major food kind of like outlets tried to make Brooklyn barbecue a thing for like a couple of years, and they've finally given up. So I wonder if part of the vitriol was that too. Yeah, it was almost like entirely Brooklyn. It wasn't like, you know, it was maybe like 20% New York, like 80% fuck you Brooklyn.
I mean, this is a team that plays in the Bronx and Queens. Like, they don't even play in Brooklyn.
I don't know.
This is also shows like semi-Texas ignorance. That being said, last night when I was watching the Inter Miami Cincinnati game before our match, that since maybe it's new or I just hadn't seen it before, but in the Bailey, the FC Cincinnati supporter section, there were fans waving a Skyline chili flag, and that is cause for some people to say that we should have a brisket flag or something like that. Like, I don't know. Be curious for your thoughts.
Yeah, no, I mean, tweet at us at Suffering Pod on Twitter and Instagram. Let us know your thoughts about what kind of flag we should have. A lot of people watching the Euros have seen the like giant hordes of Dutch fans doing the left-right jumping back and forth dance. And there's a guy who shows up in all those videos who has like the normal like red, white, and blue Holland flag, and like some of them have their city like Sval on there or whatever. And there's a guy who just has one that says Gouda on it. So I think we need to do something along those lines. We do like tacos. I don't know. We'll leave it to smarter people than us to figure that out.
Or that we have a day that we just declare food day, and there's like 30 new flags up there, and then I don't know. Get some new supporter section sponsors as well.
Yeah, there we go. This is all a meandering way to get to Charles. What's your stock rising?
I'm going to take the obvious one, which is Zardes, and not just for like this match and getting the brace, but also just like his play over the last like few weeks, which has just been a lot better and shown a lot more energy. And it's kind of good. It's kind of weird because like I see people being like, "Oh, Grandpa Zardes, blah blah blah," and I'm like, he's 32. Like he's not that old. It was also just good to see him get back into the top 10 because he was top 10, and then Joseph Martinez passed him and dropped him to 11th, and now he's back into being in the top 10 of all-time goal scorers.
Yeah, and he passed Dwayne De Rosario, so Dwayne De Rosario is not coming out of retirement anytime soon to reclaim that. So, I mean, congrats to Jossie. I think someone on here, I know I picked him at least once, and maybe Brad picked him a time or two, has picked him as a stock rising a couple times since May. And people had this thing, like, I know he had an injury issue and he's slow and had some fitness problems, but like, this is what, his third or fourth 90 this year?
It's his third since late May.
Yeah. Okay. So it's not like, I know there was some hesitation going into this, like, oh my God, Rubio suspended. Like, we got to play Jossie the whole game. It's like, we've done that before. So I don't know. I'm going to take on my other one. You know, we kind of talked about why, but fan favorite Owen Wolf was making things happen on the wing. Like, like you said, Charles, he pinched in a little bit, but our system kind of allows for that if you have an overlapping fullback. And I just thought he was very tidy on the ball. He still had a couple like bonehead moments, but that's going to happen. Even your veteran players occasionally are going to do something stupid, but for the most part, he's very solid, good defensively, didn't have the like trudging back, dad's not letting me go to the pool party shit that he sometimes does. So like, if we can get him activated and on more frequently, like, he's a good player. And since people ask this question all the time, he's not on this team and playing minutes because of nepotism. He's a good player when he's on. And also, like, our roster sucks, so that helps too. But call him out when they have a good game. He had a good game. Charles, you want to go first on stock falling?
I kind of had trouble coming up with the stock falling. I think it's probably Leo Väisänen, partially because I thought the defense wasn't that strong, and also he had to come off for Julio, and I'm kind of still unsure of what our center back depth chart looks like in Josh's mind, who's the only mind that it matters. And Seth mentioned it before of like having trade possibilities with how many center backs we currently have and how many we're adding. And I kind of wonder if Leo isn't the obvious option to get sold or traded, in hopes that like it would bring in some kind of like extra attacking depth. And so I think just stock falling from that perspective of, I feel like he's the obvious candidate to not be on the team in a month.
Yeah, for a little while, I thought him and Heinzike were gelling pretty well, and then this game was not a good advertisement for that at all.
Yeah.
Seth, any thoughts? Or go ahead.
Well, I think my other worry is it feels like Leo, like his preferred position is at right center back, and that's always going to be Julio's.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm kind of an insane. I always want a left-footed left center back, so who knows? I wonder too if they kind of like flip them in and out in practice, and they just see who's better where. But Seth, any thoughts, or do you want to do your stock falling?
No, I agree that I was just pulling up the North End sheet, and we'll give them credit because that sheet is awesome. Leo is still on an international spot, so like if FCC needs a player right now, they do have an international spot available. Leo to FCC may be a better idea than Hedges.
Yeah, I mean, I think it depends how long you want him for.
Yeah. Like, this is, I know that there are definitely some Leo defenders here. Like, I mean, he's a good player, but like, also something tells me a cooler climate might be a better fit for him as well.
Yeah. I don't know. We'll see.
And I guess it begs the next question of, okay, so if you're getting rid of one of the center backs, I don't think we're going to bring in another center back here. What is your bigger priority at this point? Bringing in a top tier 9 or bringing in another midfielder?
We can't score goals. We need a 9. Normally, I would say midfielder, but like we literally can't score goals.
But if we don't have midfielders, if we can get a dynamic midfielder that can unlock Rubio and Zardes and Bukhari, like I feel like getting someone like a Dor Peretz or someone of that mold would be really interesting for this team.
Yeah, I was going to say midfielder because I think one of the things that would help this team the most is unlocking Driussi from having to be as involved in the build-up. Yeah. And letting him kind of like be and play in a more forward area, because I think that's been like kind of a thing. That's been a thing that I don't think people have talked about as much as we should be is his declining goal performance. And a lot of that is a function of just where he is on the field.
Yep. I mean, he's not the first 10 for it to happen to. He won't be the last. You run out of other options. You drop him deeper. He doesn't do what he does best as much. Seth, did we get a stock falling from you?
You did not get a stock falling from me yet. The stock falling last night would be the Apple TV announcers, who were absolutely atrocious. And like Mark Falwell did a really good job on some matches earlier this season with Warren Barton. And I like Jaleel, who was the color commentator. I got to meet him at the MLS Next Pro Cup last year. He's a nice guy, but like they did not know what match was going on last night. I mean, yeah, some of their stuff was kind of cute. Like they were giving these like Apple versus Android plays. But they were talking about how Zardes is like Austin's star number 10. And I'm like, yes, because he just got into 10th place in the all-time goal scoring list. But like, what are you guys talking about? And it felt like every 5 minutes in that match watching it on TV, it was like they had no clue what was going on. And I think it might have been their first time or one of their first times ever working together as a pairing. And they just did not flow together. It was clear that neither of them really knew what they were talking about. And it's just talking where the stock rising of a crew from NYCFC that knew what they were talking about for both teams to having the actual game announcers who knew what they were talking about for neither of the teams was pretty atrocious.
Yeah, it's not great. And I mean, that's a risky run with the whole Apple model, right?
Yep.
So, all right, I guess I made the right decision to go ahead and head back up to the game.
Oh, yeah, there's no doubt about that.
Yeah, I don't have a great independent one. I was going to go transition defense, which is sort of along those lines with Weissman. I guess also I thought Biru had a pretty rough game. He didn't get forward as much, and he was getting torched left and right out on that wing. So I hope he's all right, and he's clearly our best option there, but not his best performance ever. And we already kind of talked about the transition D thing. Moment of suffering, since there's three of us, I guess I'm going to go first on this one. When we were down 0-1 towards the end of the first half, still there was a moment where Heinz Ike just absolutely destroyed some guy, broke his ankles, took the ball forward, looked like he had a great chance to unleash it, and passed. And then that ball, and I started laughing about it, and I was cheering because the ball got cycled all the way back to Stuver. And so we had this great offensive opportunity. And I was so tired of Austin FC's shit that I was literally like, yeah, great job. You passed it back to Stuver, because I wanted something to be happy about. And the people around me thought I had lost my damn mind.
You have lost your damn mind.
Yeah, I was going to say, but apparently that causes Zardes to score goals. So maybe I need to try that next game. We'll see.
Verticality, ruthless verticality, man.
Ruthless verticality, yeah. So, I mean, we did a reverse. We always talk about moments of suffering, but it's a moment of suffering that begat joy.
Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah. I'll go next. There was a moment in the first half where we got down, where it was we'd gotten into the box. Alex Ring he had just gone back outside the top of the box and looked like that he was playing a ball to Owen, but then Owen just dummied it and let the ball go out of bounds for a goal kick.
Yep.
And it was just just what were we doing? What were we thinking there? Just roll that tape back. It's just there was no thought in the pass. There was no thought in the dummy. I was I don't know. Austin FC, honestly, looked more like from the Austin FC road take. So actually, wait a minute, we wouldn't have been that far down the field on the road. But it was just, I don't know, it summarized a lot of what we've seen this season.
Yeah, we had a few, dear God, we really employ a set piece coach moments.
Yes.
But we got out of it all right, I guess. Charles, you got another one?
I do. So in my pre-match walk around the stadium, during the rain delay, which is when, for those of you who have never been to Q2, they call essentially a code red, where there are certain parts of the stadium you're not allowed to walk in. A lot of that is kind of in the south end, or really kind of anywhere that isn't under a roof because of safety reasons of lightning and blah, blah, blah. So that means that all the people walking around are confined to only a few spaces. And I'm walking around, I'm in the northwest corner, and I realized in trying to meander through, because I was trying to get empanadas or get to the empanadas, there's this gap. And I'm like, oh, great, I'll shoot through this gap, blah, blah, blah. And then I realized why there's a gap. And I looked up, and I saw what I think is the highest waterfall in Central Texas, coming down from the stadium in the northwest corner. And as a lover of waterfalls, especially if there's like a lagoon you can swim and like kind of see the majesty of it, it's amazing. It's one of my favorite things to do on vacations, is to try to hunt these things out. I'm really disappointed nobody told me that waterfalls exist in Q2. Like, I would have liked to have seen this. Like, this would have brought me so much joy for like the years we've had it, because clearly it was intentional. It's not like a stadium that's only 4 years old would have a leak in the roof to where a waterfall would happen during a heavy rain. And so that's just really like my suffering, is that I could have gotten so much joy out of waterfalls had anybody told me this existed.
But no, you had a great experience. It's like a secret grotto you discovered. And there's still magic in the world because you got to see not just this new waterfall you didn't know about, but you got to see Zardes goals.
That's true. And I thought about applying video game logic to it and walking through the waterfall, because invariably there would be some kind of like loot or treasure behind it. But I decided already. Yeah, 100%.
So Charles, how does this compare to the lower.com leaking roof?
Okay, so I think ours is a little better because it wasn't immediately. And if I remember correctly, and I like to think that I do, there's a whole thing about how lower.com isn't a roof, but it's actually just like a canopy. And so that house somehow made it not as big of a deal, which I don't understand. I don't understand how that's like a thing of like, no, it's intentionally supposed to leak. That's great.
Yeah. Engineering.
Which really, yeah, I mean, it really just says a lot about like Ohio's engineering and like construction processes. So I think ours is probably better.
So we asked about Laura.com first, then we asked how does it compare to Old Trafford?
Oh, it's not nearly as majestic as the Old Trafford one. That was an actually like majestic waterfall, and really based on how like Ineos is going in terms of owning the club, like I wouldn't be surprised to see them just like turn it into a water park.
Call Gary Neville. He can add it to Manchester United world. Which, by the way, listeners, if you've never heard about this, Gary Neville has this idea that the big thing that'll bring Manchester United back to glory is building a Manchester United theme park, like fucking Disney World or Six Flags or something like that, but like Manchester United themed outside of Old Trafford. And that's the only thing Man United's missing. It's the only thing wrong with the club.
Yeah, that's the thing, is that sounded like more of a joke than my New York salsa thing, but that's real.
Yeah, that's real. Sorry. Yeah. If you guys have time, Gary Neville and his, he also thinks he invented the term vacation, but he calls them mini retirements. So he's a weird guy. Yeah. I don't know. I feel like I had another one, but I don't remember what it was. Oh, yeah. Do you have any comparisons to the waterfall we saw at whatever they're calling Signal Iduna Park for the Euros?
I mean, that was an incredible, but also like how that match was only delayed by 25 minutes between Germany and Denmark. In the United States, that would have been a 3-hour delay for sure. I think the rest of the world is going to be. It's kind of I'm double checking my thinking here. There has not been a Copa America match that has been delayed yet, right?
I don't think so.
Yeah, which is like, I mean, they played a lot of matches in domes and on the West Coast. But I don't know. It makes me think that we are probably overdue for a delay in the final next Sunday night in Miami because, I think it's a great idea to kick off sporting events outdoors in Miami in June. Not June, in July. But we'll see how that goes. At least it doesn't look like a hurricane's going to hit them next week, which is good. But we'll take it with when it comes. And I just don't think the world is ready for the 2026 World Cup delays that are going to happen in the United States and Canada and Mexico. Maybe not as much Canada and Mexico because Toronto would just was the only venue. Vancouver's indoors, and the Mexican venues they get less thunder over there. I mean, it could happen, but I think it's less likely.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see, but there's definitely going to be some interesting fuckery about. Since you segued into it a little bit, let's put a pin on the U.S. performance at Copa America. Seth, you were at the game on Monday.
I was at the game on Monday. Well, that's over.
Yes, it's over is a good description of it.
It was a so as we're going through it, it is going to be a Yeah. How Greg, I mean, hopefully by the time we record this next week or whatever our next episode is, that Greg won't have a job. But we'll find out this week. And I really hope that Matt Crocker has all of the available cash, resources, goodwill, and everything else to hire someone who, I don't know, has actually coached a bunch of egos and doesn't want to be players' best friends and can actually get the most out of our current squad. And not alienate dual nationals.
Yeah, so I mean, here's the whole thing. Everybody, Knives came out. People who are normally Super Greg, U.S. Soccer can do no wrong folks have been calling for his head. And then U.S. Soccer released this statement that basically said, hey, we'll tell you guys next week, which kind of jives with some other sort of inside stuff I've heard. And I mean, take that stuff with a grain of salt. You never really know how good or verifiable or anything it is. But Charles, what would you say the percentage chance that Greg gets fired is?
I actually think it's pretty high. I don't think they pre-announced. And to give a number, I'll say 75.
Okay.
I don't think you announce there's going to be a decision in a week if you're not firing the coach. That seems like a silly, you do the oh, of course, Greg is our coach and he's a leader and the players, blah, 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 kind of statement if you're keeping him. It seems weird to be hey, we're going to announce in a week we're keeping the coach. That doesn't make sense from a PR perspective. And I think that they're taking the time to, one, organize the buyout, and two, try to have an announcement soon. Because the obvious candidate would have been BJ Callahan, who's the assistant, but he just accepted the Nashville job. So they're clearly going to have to go outside of the coaching staff, which is a good thing, to try to replace him. And I think they're giving themselves time to get that worked out.
Okay, so I mean, are there panic calls to Jurgen Klopp? What's going on here?
Well, they should have been on the fucking phone with him nonstop, anyways.
Yeah, I think Klopp's probably the we're swinging for the fences choice. I don't know. I kind of don't get the impression that he would take it, unless you're just throwing a bunch of money at him, which you should.
No, but I also don't. I also think. I mean, it's really funny. So all the speculation starts up, and then Klopp puts up a big Instagram post about how much he loves the U.S. on July 4th.
Yeah, well, I mean,
yeah, but is that the same way that Driussi posted he was watching a Leeds match during the Leeds rumors to troll everybody?
Yeah, I mean, it very easily could be, but it is. At a point, it could be trolling, but it also could be that he wants to do international coaching next, and he knows that Nagelsmann did a good enough job with the Mannschaft in the Euros, and it's okay, this job isn't coming open. I can coach the host nation at a World Cup. Oh, and Klopp has. It's funny because yes, you could back up a Brinks truck to him, and U.S. Soccer doesn't have that much money, but they could find sponsors in a heartbeat that would pay his salary. I don't even think it would be about money for him. Klopp has been someone who's gotten to a point of wanting to do things to make a larger impact because that's of who he is as a person, because he is not wired the same way that most other human beings are wired. And I mean, he's crazy, but he knows what he's doing. And I think he could get way, way more out of this current player pool than what we have, and also begin to revolutionize what youth soccer looks like in this country.
Are you just saying that because he's Swabian?
I mean, I am not as someone who studied abroad and is a Freiburg supporter. We don't like the Schwabens. The Badischer don't like the Schwabens.
Okay.
Oh, no.
Yeah. So I'm going to give two reasons why everything you just said is bullshit. The post on July 4th is because Jurgen Klopp just spent a shit ton of time at Liverpool, which is owned by the owner of the Boston Red Sox, which he very clearly had a close working relationship with. He posted a picture at Fenway, and so it's just sort of a, nostalgic thank you for all my time and all the time we spent together. Really appreciate you and all the American fans. The other thing, and I think I agree with actually everything you said about making a bigger impact, and he would do, we talk about Klopp as a tactician and, his go-go, fuck you, rock and roll soccer, heavy metal soccer. What he's better than practically anybody on the planet at is just motivating players and getting every last little inch out of them, which is what you need in a national coach, right?
Yeah.
It's way less about tactics. It's more just maximizing everything. But my hang up I would have if I were him is that if he takes this U.S. job and Greg has already driven them so far into the ground that even he can't recover them, then it really dents his like future Germany job chances without having to take another club job, which I don't think he wants to do.
He's also, Jurgen Klopp has achieved enough at Mainz, Dortmund, and Liverpool that even if he screws up in America, it could be written off as, oh, well, those people at U.S. Soccer are crazy and never gave him the chance. That's super easy for him to write off.
Yeah, I just don't know the German dynamic as well as you do.
Yeah, I mean, Jurgen Klopp is on a tier in that country that is near godlike. I mean, if the timing had been different, he would have easily, but like also just the demands of being an international coach are far less than being the demands of a of a club coach. And I think I wouldn't be shocked if the U.S. would be like, hey, like, I'm going to take this job effective January 1st or something like that. And that might not even just be the case for Jurgen Klopp. That could be a case for all sorts of other managers because they want a little bit of time off. I mean, heck, we gave Emma Hayes almost a full year to finish coaching at Chelsea. Like, we need to hire an Emma Hayes tier coach on the men's side.
Yeah, and also, the whole, 13 months for Greg Berhalter thing. But,
yes.
That was the last time we had a huge crisis, and we left the job open for 13 months for the preferred candidate of the hiring manager's hiring manager.
Yes. Well,
we're not going to get into the whole story.
Are behind us, but we'll see.
Well, I mean, it wouldn't shock me either if they're doing this whole ploy where they're like, well, Greg's got to go, so I guess we'll let Greg go. And then they wait a month and they go, well, we couldn't find anybody else to hire at the same salary. And Greg said he'd just take the same money that we already offered him and a little more type of thing.
Yeah.
So, after the whole post-2022 thing, my tinfoil hat is firmly on.
Yeah. I hear you.
I think for good reason.
I just think that, being able to coach a host country of a World Cup who has a team that can do something in terms of talent, I think should be enough of a draw to get somebody. It's just a matter of if the powers that be actually want to do that, or if they feel like it's more important to keep the level of control and pipeline going than really try to win. And I'm not totally sure that I believe that they are.
Yeah.
No,
I mean, I would say that I don't know if you guys heard it yesterday. I think it was either yesterday or Friday, but I don't know when it was actually recorded live, but Rafa Benitez pitched himself for the U.S. men's national team job.
I almost think he's the inverse of Klopp in that he's a very good tactician, but he's boring as fuck.
Yeah, but I mean, he was praising Luca De La Torre, who he managed at Celta Vigo this past season. I'm trying to look. Has he ever managed a national team? He hasn't. I mean, it's quite a career journey from him, from being the Real Madrid U17 manager to the Castilla manager to 5 clubs in Spain, ending at Valencia, to Liverpool, to Inter Milan, to interim at Chelsea, to Napoli, to Real Madrid, to Newcastle, to 2 years in China, to Everton, to Celta Vigo. And he's only 64. And his English is fine because that was one of the things is when they were trying to go after Zidane in the last cycle, that it was determined that his English was not proficient enough to be hired by U.S. Soccer.
Yes, let's go ahead and tell Zidane what the fuck to do.
I wish he could have just headbutted them back.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, Charles, to kind of answer your question, or I assume it was semi-rhetorical, they're more interested in hanging onto the pipeline and their little fiefdom of power than anything. I mean, to go Game of Thrones quote on it, they would rather rule over the ashes.
Yeah, I think about that when you think about the two managers that they were rumored to be very interested in the job that they didn't go for. In Marsh, who's currently coaching a semifinal in Copa America, and Bielsa, who's also coaching in the semifinal in Copa America. And Bielsa had an interesting quote because he was suspended for the U.S. match. And he had some quote about how it didn't matter if he was on the sideline because the U.S. didn't try to do anything until the last 10 minutes anyway. And a very dismissive view of what the U.S. coaching staff was doing.
Well, I mean, Greg got fucking murked by Louis van Gaal, who was half retired at the time, who's just in the World Cup.
Well, I mean, that's also Berhalter was trying to play a Dutch 4-3-3B system against somebody who has been playing in or coaching that system longer than Greg's been alive. And so that just kind of like inherently was like a mistake to even try to attempt. And there's a reason why the U.S. got destroyed in that game.
Okay, but that's worse. And you realize that's worse, right?
It is. That's actually the argument that I don't think people understand, is that like there is no world where you are going to play against the Dutch in their system and beat them. There just isn't.
No, but
despite the Greg stands on Twitter who tried to make that all into like individual mistakes, even though like you could just watch that match and see that like at no point were the Netherlands worried that we were going to win.
No.
Well, I hope the Dutch have a strong performance on Wednesday and knock out the English,
as we all do.
But to add on to the trolls, did you guys see the story about Sebastian Berhalter likely being one of the leading trolls defending his dad?
First of all, I don't care. Second of all, like, it wouldn't surprise me. Third of all, I think that's just somebody saying it seems like it's him. I don't know if there's any like actual proof about it.
I don't think there's any proof either, but I thought it was worth shooting the shit on.
It would very, very much fit the U.S. soccer fuck mess mold.
Yeah.
Yeah. So let's say you can't, like, Greg is gone. Let's say you can't have Klopp, Marsh, or Bielsa for obvious reasons. If you have like a left field pick, who would you want to see, or just kind of a name you want to throw out there? Charles, anybody you're thinking about?
I kind of feel like Joachim Low would be somebody that they could go after. I don't know if they'd go after another German national team coach or not, but I was trying to think of like national team coaches with pedigree that aren't currently employed. And I think he would be kind of top of my list.
Yeah, and his whole background is pretty much national team coaching too, so.
Yeah, like he would get it more than like, I don't know that like luring a club coach to be the national team coach for 2 years is the route we want to take.
No, and I mean, this is kind of the problem with hiring Greg again after 2022, is if you fuck it up, you don't have time to fix it.
I mean, Lowe has never lived outside of Germany or Austria. And I just don't see, like, I don't know if they would force him to move here to Chicago like they would on other things. But, like, when I was in college and studying abroad in Freiburg, you would see Yo-Yo Lowe, like, biking around the city. You'd see him at coffee shops. Like, he was very much like a German urbanist who was at home in his environment. He was the national team coach for 15 years. He has nothing else to achieve in his life. I mean, I would love it, but I just don't see it.
Yeah.
I mean, Charles? We can all hope.
Yeah. I think that's a good pick. So, yeah. Go ahead.
Go ahead,
Charles. Oh, sorry. Charles, I thought you were going to add something.
Nope. Don't need to.
Don't need to. All right. Seth, anybody you want to see like interviewed or maybe get the job?
I mean, sorry. As we're going through things, I know he's apparently currently vacationing in Montana, but seeing Carlo Ancelotti just randomly like in rural Montana was pretty hilarious. I'd love to see him interviewed. I don't think he'd actually be the right fit for this role, but that would be a pretty interesting choice. But he's done a fantastic job over there. But like, it is a question of like, he's another person who's in his mid-60s, has lots of experience, but he admittedly has only done clubs, hasn't done national teams. So maybe that wouldn't be the right fit.
No, and I mean, he has kind of a good gig where he basically manages a shit ton of egos at Real Madrid and smokes cigars and eats carbonara and wins Champions Leagues.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, at a point, but like what you need here is an ego manager more than anything else. And Greg is clearly not up to that job.
I mean, I think we need quite a few things, but ego manager is definitely one of them.
I mean, the biggest problem with Greg ego managing is that he can't manage his own ego.
Yes.
Yes, I would agree on that.
I'm going to throw a little random name out there. I don't know if I want this guy hired or if I'm just curious to see the reaction. Current France women's national team coach Hervé Renard, which I'm sure I'm saying that wrong because he's French and I do not speak any amount of French. Coach of Saudi Arabia at the last World Cup. So he has World Cup experience, has won 2 African Cup of Nations, took Morocco to a decent run 2018 World Cup.
How's his English?
Don't know. I was going to ask you.
I'm going through his. I think Zambia is a primarily English-speaking country. Oh, he was the manager at Cambridge United for a season.
Yeah, there you go. He's got at least. I mean, if you have that much international experience, you have to speak some level of English.
Yes.
Plus, the Handsome Boys Modeling Football Club people would go fucking ballistic over that hire.
Yeah, or the current Swiss coach as well. I mean, that guy seemed to be getting some attraction from that crowd as well.
Yeah, the folks over at Men in Blazers did a great poll, and he definitely looks like the college professor who steals your high school girlfriend. But he's Swiss, and I think he's going to keep his job too. So
I would keep him as well after that Euro performance.
Yeah, I don't know.
But it's also like you don't just have to be looking at like we're the United States of America. If there is someone that we want, we should be able to poach them out of an existing job.
Yeah, I mean, like money should be the last thing that's a fucking problem for the U.S. Like, and I mean, Charles mentioned it too. You're hosting a World Cup. You know, the next one's in Saudi Arabia. You're basically like pinging it down like
next one
10 years till you can do that again.
No, the next one is the crazy 6-country World Cup.
Oh, you're right. Sorry.
Which, like, okay, there's only going to be like 3 of those countries are only going to host one match. But yes, it's going to be nauseating. And then people are going to realize that it's really stupid, just like Euro 2020 was really stupid.
Okay, so that's what Portugal, Spain, Morocco's doing most of it?
Yeah, and then Uruguay, Paraguay, and Argentina are each hosting one match.
Yeah, okay, so unless you're taking the Morocco job, if you're like a national team coach, you're not getting the Portugal or Spain jobs unless you're like really, and I mean, the politics in those two is insane. So, I mean, this is kind of your free hit.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, like, I will say the one coach I do not want us to end up with is Roberto Martinez. If we end up with him somehow at the end of this, I will go watch non-U.S. national team matches at the World Cup.
I'm not going to say that would be worse, but it's close. Charles, do you want to jump in here?
Well, I was just going to say, like, counterpoint, like somehow Portugal hired Roberto Martinez, who wasted like the best teams that Belgium's ever had, and in addition to not being a good club manager. Like, I don't know, the other names I keep seeing for the U.S. job is like Steve Cherundolo, but like, is he leaving a cushy job at LAFC where he's like a contender every year and kind of play whatever players he wants? Like, or like Wilfred Nancy, I guess I could see, but like that seems like a weird thing of just like hiring their crew coach again, which would be very U.S. soccer. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
But that would also just be like a weird thing to do. And like, is he going to leave like mid-season when they're playing so well? Like that might be more of a like start January 1st thing. But then who's your interim guy? I don't know. It just seems like there's a lot of different directions they can go in, and I'm not sure that I just kind of don't trust like Crocker to pick the right one.
No, well, I mean, it's becoming increasingly clear that Crocker was hired to rehire Greg and add a thin veneer of, impartiality to it. But, I don't know. Like, I like Steve Cherundolo, and I would have taken him after 2022. But, like, he's sort of in this weird, like, he's attached to U.S. soccer, but he's not, like, one of the cool kids type of things. So
and that's a positive in my book.
Yeah, no, but it also means he's less likely to be hired.
Yes,
yeah, like
we start going into a world here where U.S. soccer needs to shake something up, but you can shake up without shaking it too far up, and Steve is a safe option for that.
I think Steve is like my C+, B- hire at this point. Like, he's fine.
I would be more excited to see a team with him than Greg.
Sure. But, I mean, we're running a little long, but I did want to ask one kind of final question on this. Assuming Greg gets the sack, is Josh going to hire him here?
Greg will. I mean, there are so many MLS openings. I assume that if Greg Berhalter gets sacked, that he will be the next Chicago Fire head coach because he already lives here in Chicago.
Yeah, works out well for everyone but you.
I mean, I pay $720 for 2 season tickets and parking to the Fire. Like, what do I care? Like, I actually don't own a Fire jersey despite having 2 season tickets because I go for the lulls. And let me tell you, if you're judging a team based on lulls, you should absolutely do that. Also, assuming we release this podcast before tonight, Sicko's game of the year, Chicago at San Jose, and it is an early 7:30 Central Time kick tonight. Like, I expect pure chaos.
That'll be good. Charles, your thoughts before we get out of here?
Yeah, like, I agree. Like, there's so many MLS jobs open that, like, Greg will probably get hired there. I don't see Josh hiring. I know, because there's a lot of rumors that, like, Davey Arno wouldn't accept the head coach, wouldn't accept the interim job if Josh got fired, and you know that Greg would just like do everything he could to get Josh fired just for him to be the head coach. So like, I just don't think you'd ever like willingly accept somebody who would do that to you.
Good point. All right. Anything else we want to add before we jump off? I feel like we could do the Greg thing all day, but maybe we'll do if he actually gets fired, do a full episode.
Emergency podcast midweek. But I feel like we've already covered half of the material that would be in that podcast. Anyways.
Yeah, but there will be so many more rumors and, knives coming out and crazy stories and stuff. We'll see.
Who steps down first, Greg Berhalter or Joe Biden? Oh gosh, that just gets depressing.
Yeah. That's definitely a different one. So we'll, on that note, on behalf of Charles and Seth, we got to win again. Thanks for suffering with us. Bye.
Promise here for Austin Jarrett Stroud. It's Diego, for goodness! He has written his name into Austin folklore.
They just won't go away.
Oh, he hits the upright again. That's impossible.
The Bears' season's going to end on a double doink.
Altidore squares it. Dempsey's missed it. Donovan has it. From hope, there is glory.